Ribbit, ribbit. Here's your look at the Hasbro Marvel Legends Stiltman Build-A-Figure wave, and this is Marvel's Frogman. Eugene Petilia suits up as Frogman in a misguided attempt to restore his family's good name. Before we get a closer look at Frogman, sounds like we're talking about Mega Man villains for a second, we're going to get this guy clocked in. And to get him clocked in, I'm going to measure it at around the point of his googly eyes. His googly eyes. Stopping the tape measure right there. According to the readouts, Frogman stands 6.5 inches in height. We can switch that to centimeters, revealing that the figure is 16.5, or 16.7 to be exact. In fact, for some size comparisons, we can move over Marvel's Frogman. Let's bring in Prowler. Just going to give you guys an idea. Something I didn't do when we had a look at the Prowler. I should have actually brought in Gwen Stacy. But nonetheless, here he is, what he looks like next to Frogman. You can see they're roughly about the same height to one another. Obviously, there's a little bit more girth involved, perhaps, with Marvel's Frogman when you compare it against the more slender frame of Prowler here to his left. Marvel's Frogman, and I'm assuming that they have to call him Marvel's Frogman because they probably don't have the rights just to call him Frogman, does come included with some accessories. 2 swappable hands that we'll talk about in a second, and of course the much-needed Build-A-Figure pieces to continue our build of Stiltman. We're making slow progress here. To come included with Frogman, he comes with the other arm. Well, that's rather handy, of course. The other arm is still made of this sort of marbled silver plastic, which as you run your finger across it, has a smooth-to-the-touch feel. Do you like the design of this? It has a few little, like I said, the little marbling cracks to it. It's not cracks necessarily to the plastic, but just like the mold of the plastic when it came out of the press. You can see it right there. But we're going to go ahead and reach off to the black hole. Let go, let go. There we go. Grabbing the torso of where we've left off. Obviously, we only have just this one arm and the main torso. We're making very slow progress, and I'll be the first to admit it. We're making slow progress, but I hope that trend will continue a little at a faster speed. We're going to go ahead and take the arm that came included with Frogman, plug that into place just like that. He does also come included with, much like Prowler, a swappable hand option. So if you don't want to have him with gripping anything and just instead want to go the closed fist route, he does also come included with a closed fist for that hand, not this hand over here. He also comes included with a blaster, which I would assume is for specifically Stiltman and not necessarily for Frogman. It does fit into his hand, though, rather tight, as you can see right there. If it does belong to Frogman, I apologize well in advance, but the hands are not configured to hold the blaster, which is why I'm convinced it's supposed to go along with Stiltman. We're going to stick with that for the time being. We're going to run with that. Moving that to the side. Having a look, like I said, at the other accessories that come included with Frogman, the only other options he has is basically swappable hands. Closed fists and then an open hand, which is basically just the mirror opposite to what's currently on the figure. It would be the opposite like this. I'll show you how to change out the hands right now. Simply just pick up the figure. And you know what? I'm going to remove this boring fist anyways. How exciting really is that? I'm going to go ahead and just pop that out of the socket. In order to do that, you're just going to wiggle and pull it, and then pop the replacement hand in place. There you go. I always like dynamic hands a little bit more. I find them much more exciting than closed fists. So that's what we're going to go ahead and run with when it comes to the rest of this review of Frogman. Sorry, Marvel's Frogman. So that's basically it in the way of his accessories. Marvel's Frogman, I believe, started as a villain in Daredevil comics, if memory serves me correctly. And then later on, the costume was used by, I believe, his son, and he teamed up with the likes of Spider-Man and the Avengers. So he's sort of been a villain, and he's sort of been a hero. You really could decide for yourself where you want to display this in your display cabinet. I kind of really like the idea of treating him as a villain more so, because he's just so outrageous and over the top. He suits better, I feel, as being a villain, but it's entirely up to you which method you want to go. If you compare Frogman here with the back of the packaging, the coloring of this character is slightly darker on the packaging, and I would have initially said I think the coloring on Frogman is a little on the light side. However, going back to the source material, of course, the comics in which this character is pulled from, Frogman does have notably light lime-colored costume like this. So he is really pretty accurate to the way he looks in the comics, complete with these little markings here all over his costume. It looks like little tiny slits, but I guess they're supposed to be just textures to his costume. Obviously, the coolest aspect of this figure, well, for starters, the fact that we have such an outrageous looking character be produced as a Marvel Legends, but one of my favorite aspects of this has got to be the interior of his head. Now, anybody, if I was designing a frog costume, I probably would have gone the route of maybe trying to have the eyes as the place that I look out of. No, not Frogman. You literally can see his eyes from the opening of the mouth of the frog head. I think that's super cool. There's just the right amount of sculpting there that with the light hitting it just the right place. You can make out that there's a nose, you can make out there's eyebrows, and you can even make out there's a bit of a sunken brow, which is why I really think that this guy is closer to being a villain than being a hero. Again, it's entirely up to you which way you'd like to display this guy. But he's got a big giant head, a big giant frog head. How do you beat that? That looks so very cool. The coloring, though, simplistic, really, when you look at it. I mean, the majority of it is this lime green, and then you've got the lighter, more yellowish green making up the gloves, making up the backpack that we'll talk about in a second. And, of course, he's got his underoos as well. Not to mention his feet, which would be the biggest problem I have with the figure, but stay tuned for that. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Spinning the figure around, though, and looking at the back of his backpack, it sort of seems the way it's been constructed, like this part can actually detab on either side right there. See how it looks like it's a separate piece? You can also, if you look at it right here, it looks like it untabs itself from the back openings. The fact that they went the mile of actually sculpting as much as they did on that torso makes me think that you can remove the backpack. With that being said, I'm having some real difficulty, not so much removing it from this part. I mean, this frees itself pretty easy from the holes on his back, but I can't seem to release the little tabs on either side of his backpack. I would only be really doing it for the purpose of this review. Displaying options available, I would definitely just keep the backpack on his back. But I did really want to show you guys that it would be removable. But like I said, on either side of those tab points, it definitely seems like it's really sunken in there. Like it does look like it is a separate piece. I just don't want to really break it. But you would imagine that if you were to lift this up, some nice additional vented holes would sort of be treated on the back of Frogman here. I really like the design of this character. He's so crazy cool. Of course, he's got his lower underoos going on there, the same coloring as his gloves. Again, you've got those dynamic hands I've already taken the liberty of swapping out. I prefer the look of the more kind of gestured hands as opposed to just closed fists. Closed fist gets awfully boring, awfully quick. Paint is pretty good on this guy. Sometimes arms, you know, whether they paint a torso or they use plastic, sometimes you may have differences in sheen. I don't know if you can see it or not, but the arms are a little shinier than the torso is. Not to the point where it's really visibly noticeable, like I'm looking at it right now. And it's only because I got studio light shining down on it right now that I see the difference between the two. But I think it's pretty close. It's close enough, at least for me. As we get a little bit further down on the legs, basically you're treated to the same deco as we got up here in the arms and also in the torso. Here's my big problem with this figure, is the feet, is specifically, as you can see, the flipper feet that are on Frogman here. Now, if you flip it upside down, what's neat about it is they actually have sculpted the springs that will allow him, of course, to spring those high leaps. He also does have peg holes on the undersides of his feet, so if you do want to use a display stand, you can. Although if you use just a traditional like NECA display stand, the holes don't seem to be the right size, and I can't get them to attach to a display stand that way. But my big real issue with this figure is the feet. The feet, I have a difficulty not only just getting the figure to stand. Standing is a bit of an issue because he has the back heaviness of his backpack. But the thing I really wanted to do with this character was be able to have him in a crouching pose. Kind of have his legs slightly bent. I know we'll talk a little bit more about articulation in a second. But I really wanted to get him in a bit of a crouching pose. Unfortunately, whether you decide to just put him in a crouching pose or you just really want to be able to pose his feet, they do have, of course, the little hinge joint that allows the feet to hinge back and forth. I don't know if it would have actually been possible if they could have moved the track a little bit longer up, where you would have been able to pose the feet a lot greater than what you can actually do right now. Because you can't really get any more of a bend than what you're getting right now. It literally just goes like this, and it goes like this, and it goes like this. That's all you can actually pull off. I really wish that this joint, this hinge, was longer, or somehow they had cut in the top of his boot. Just cut in this area right here and bring that hinge joint so a little more of it was accessible. So you could actually have hinged the feet further inward if you wanted to have him in a crouched, riveting, jumping pose. And like I said, you can't pull that off. However, though, looking at the posability here on Frogman, his head rotates all the way around. It hinges up and it hinges down. And of course, all that goes in between. You can also rock the head back and forth like this as well. For the arms hinge out. You can see there's the hinge joint right there. So you can bring them out at a full 90-degree angle bend. No problems there whatsoever. You can rotate the arms all the way around as well. You can swivel at the bicep. He has a double hinge on the elbow. You can also rotate. You can't rotate this part here, but you, of course, can rotate the hand all the way around, and you can also hinge that back and forth. For his upper torso, now his upper torso, it's clever the way that they've done this. Let's just bring that arm in. Is it a little on the stuck side? There we go. Really clever what they've done here is they've concealed the joint for his torso by putting the strap of the backpack dividing or covering over that little divided area, where he actually does have articulation. But the articulation, like I said, is hidden by that strap. That's really smart, the way that they've done that. He doesn't seem to have lower waist swivel, so really all of it is kept to just the upper torso ball joint. The legs can swivel back and forth and out. He has a swivel 3/4 of the way up the thigh. It swivels and allows the leg to rotate all the way around. That doesn't seem like that would be healthy. He does have a double hinge on the knee, so you can bring that back and forth. Double hinge there. He does have a rotation, so the feet, essentially the boots, are a separate part to the figure. See how you can rotate it all the way around this way? And he does also have a pretty good ankle tilt this way, but I just wish he had more going on this way. The only way they could have rectified that, again, is by bringing the cut further up on the part of the boot where this hinge would have been a little more accessible. Because of that, unfortunately, you can't get him in an actual true crouching pose like you would really want to do, obviously, if he's trying to be portraying himself as a frog. Really like the design of this one quite a bit. It's ridiculous. It's over the top. It's all the things I really like about Marvel Legends when I am collecting Marvel Legends. Sure, it's fine to get, a typical Captain America, a typical Iron Man, a typical Spider-Man. But when you get these over-the-top heroes / villains like Marvel's Frogman, these are the figures that I think would probably result in being peg warmers. And yet, for me, these are the figures that I start sourcing out first just because of the over-top nature design of this particular figure. Based on the type of characters that you fancy the most for Marvel Legends, this may be one of those characters that you would just look at it immediately and think, oh great, I'm going to have to buy a Marvel's Frogman in order to get a piece that I need to complete Stiltman. Or you could be on the other end of that scale like myself, who look at that and say, hey, all right, it's Frogman released as a Marvel Legends. In fact, actually, I think he's one of the more exciting figures that we get from the Stiltman wave. And I was really excited to actually be picking this one up and opening this one. I think of all the figures of the Stiltman wave. Is that a little strange that I was the most excited for Frogman? I was. I like the design nature of him. Again, when I'm looking at him, for me, I'm always into the Marvel villains, the ones that are over the top, like 8 Ball, for example, Mysterio, and characters like Marvel's Frogman. These are characters that work really well as a figure because they're over the top. They're characters that wouldn't work really well in a real-world application, but certainly as a Marvel Legends, Marvel's Frogman looks fantastic. And of course, we're one step closer to building our Stiltman. We're making, again, very slow progress. We still technically have 3 figures to get through before we finish off the rest of Stiltman, and of course, the review of Stiltman will be coming shortly after that. Let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of Marvel's Frogman. And for your video question for today, what over-the-top design costume villain do you think is a really cool-looking villain? One of my top favorites has to be 8 Ball. I don't even know if we have actually gotten an 8 Ball character released as Marvel Legends. And right next to that is Mysterio. Just the big, giant fishbowl head. But what over-the-top costume villain are some of your favorites? Let me know down below in the comments section. Make sure you hit the subscribe button down below if you haven't done so already. Make sure as well you turn on the bell notification. And make sure you come back to this channel Monday to Friday, 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Because, of course, we're going to be having a look at the rest of the Stiltman wave. But there's going to be a whole ton of other reviews coming your way. I want to say Marvel Legends, but yes, there are going to be Marvel Legends, but there's going to be a whole ton of other reviews lined up and coming your way. So always, always, always keep those peepers ever peeled. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.